Okay. So first of all, thank you guys from Angelo and myself. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight, for being part of this this talk. It's our Steps' 20-year anniversary this May, this month, and we are super, super happy about having 20 years in this business. Well, even longer, just 20 years as a step. But very sad that we can't actually celebrate and dance with everybody and have a big kick-ass party and do a whole bunch of stuff. So we're hoping to do different things every month for the next year to celebrate. There'll be workshops, there'll be hopefully some sort of outdoor party, but we're not kind of giving up yet. So, but this was kind of the start of it. We wanted to go back in time. A lot of our students only know, the past couple of years or the past 5 years or the past 2 years. They don't really know the history of how we all know each other and how we all got here and how the scene has changed in Toronto. So I have been dancing salsa, I'm gonna really date myself, but I have been dancing salsa for almost 30 years in Toronto. And so I've seen it change a lot from what it was when I first started taking classes at Berlin nightclubs to what it is today, what it was pre-COVID and what it is now. So a lot of, and I think what a lot of, and I've talked about this in some of my classes before, and what a lot of our students don't understand is that this really is our family, and this has become our family.
Yes.
And some of us have known each other for 20 years, 25 years. Like, I think I've known Jason for 25 years, I think, and Paula as well. And Angus and Caryl, maybe 20, right? Maybe a couple more. So these, Alicia and Jesse, same thing. Like, a lot of us grew up together. We kind of, we've seen marriages and babies and changes and houses and studios and choreographies and competitions and shows and workshops. It's kind of cool to know a lot of people over that length of time, and for them to have seen us all grow up. So first of all, thank you guys so much for being here. So excited. Okay, are we ready to go? Question number 1. So basically, at any moment, I don't know how the panel wants to do this. If you want me to ask each person, you may not all want to answer every question. So I'm just going to ask the question, and I'm going to ask people on the panel to kind of quickly give their own answer. And then after the panel has talked, and if anybody else wants to add anything or ask anything, you can just unmute yourself, or you can type it in the chat. Typing in the chat might be a little bit easier for now because there's so many of us. Here we go. Okay, so this is to the panel. Do you remember the first time you ever went out social dancing? Tell us about it. I remember distinctly. Okay, I think Giovanni.
Okay, the first day, I think I went to this Columbia place on Lawrence and Kiel. It wasn't a
I think you took
basement.
me there. You took me there.
There you go. You're welcome. And it was owned by a Colombian couple. So at that time, and basically that was the very few places where, we can go dancing. There was El Rancho in Berlin at that time, but that place, probably one of the first ones I started going out, and they have this, I went because there was a salsa competition, and the competition was basically 3 couples. I was one of them. And I remember that I had to compete against Zero, which is Karen's cousin. I don't know if you remember him. Zero and his wife.
Yeah.
Jessica's mom. And we were dancing, and obviously there's, that Colombian kind of ambience.
Meaning loud?
What? It's very crazy. it's such a small place, and like, you know, and the smallest places in Toronto at that time were the most busier, like where people wanted to be in. And I started the competition, and I won the competition. I won a trip to Miami that I never went. And ever after that, I got asked to teach. I never knew how to teach. I knew how to dance. And after that, obviously, I started going to the clubs, and Berlin was one of them. And I think I remember, what's the name? The brothers. The
Venezuelan brothers.
Yeah.
That's how you and I met. That's how you and I started teaching together.
Yeah. So, you know,
Roger,
Rogelio, and what was the other guy's name?
I know, I can't remember. I just remember Roger.
Who said that? Hit it.
Roger.
Guillermo.
Guillermo. Thank you, Javier. Guillermo.
So anyway, so it was like those guys were pretty known in the scene back in the days as well. And
okay, hold on, but don't tell us the whole thing. This was just your first time in a social club.
The first time on my social was that time.
Okay.
And that's basically when I started, like, because of that competition, pretty much the passion, the desire to compete, or the desire to, I mean, teaching was because of that moment that I won that competition. And my first students were from Chile, by the way. So Chilean couple, and everything after that, you know.
Awesome.
You were the next link.
Okay, Angus and Caryl, your first time you went social dancing.
Okay, so I tell my students, or I tell our students all the time, but my first outing was from being in your class, Jen. Jennifer was my very first official salsa teacher. Yeah, right? I tell everybody that because, like, I mean, that experience obviously helped keep me interested to continue after all these years. And so we went to El Rancho. I think that was my first time there. Does that sound right? It feels like that's where we would have gone like 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had been to clubs before, but this was, and just kind of watching from the background, but this is the first time where, like, I knew a few steps and I could play around. And Jen was like our mother. She like, come on, everybody, let's get on the dance floor, even just kind of doing shines that she had taught us that day. She really tried to give everyone a fun experience. So I remember that first experience. Thanks, Jen.
Awesome. Thank you. Angus?
My first outing was to the legendary Babalu. So I was working at a bank at the time, and one of my colleagues there was an avid salsa dancer. And he brought me and 6 other guys to Babalu. And we saw this geeky programmer that we knew. His name was Sasan. Sort of, you know, cutting up the floor with all these women that night. And immediately the next day, all 6 of the guys that came with him that night, we all signed up for our first salsa lessons the next day.
That's awesome.
Cool.
That's awesome. Angelo, your first time in a social, unmute yourself. You're muted.
I'm not actually, I can't even remember exactly. I'm not 100% sure which one it was. It could be one of 3 different clubs. There was La Classique, and there was a club called Sabor Latino, and Plaza Flamingo. And it's definitely one of those. I can't like go as far back because this was back in the days when I was actually still in college. And yeah, so when I first went out and danced to salsa for the very first time, really was one of those clubs. And I learned how to dance salsa in high school when I dated a Hispanic girl who taught me how to dance the salsa. And so, you know what? I think it was La Classique because we actually ended up competing at La Classique, and we just got the social dance. And yeah, I actually got to win that as well. So I have something to share with Gio. Yes. Woo!
Good man.
Yes. So I got to win that.
The Torres connection, brother.
Yeah, and I was Mr. La Classique that night. So that was my very first experience. I can't tell you how long ago that was, but that was so long ago. That was back in the
Wow.
day when I was in college.
Wow. Jason, your first time?
Oh,
First time social dancing at a club. Stick to the theme.
I think him and Teddy got an inside joke going on.
I think Teddy would know the story better than I do. Because for everybody who doesn't know me, I'm Jason. Teddy actually is my first dance teacher, my first salsa dance teacher. All right. I was 17 at that time. All right. So going into clubs, it was illegal, and I didn't have a fake ID. So if Teddy, remind me, where was it? Did we go to Babalu's?
No, UB and Gene went to Convento Rico.
Convento Rico.
Puerto Rico.
Yes.
I like that.
Oh my God. What happened?
Oh, are you sure you want me to say?
Oh my God. Wait. No, no.
Yes.
It was a good experience.
Yeah, I was barely dancing. And Jason, I went to the washroom, and Jason danced with a drag queen. And then I came, actually, it was very cool of him. I came back, he was in the pool table touching his ear. And he goes, "What happened to you?" I said, "Oh man, drag queen licked my ear."
Ah. Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah. There are quite a lot of experiences with Teddy where it was an eye opener. Remember the time at Chango's, my first time at Chango's?
Yes, I remember.
So Chango's was a bar, right? Back in the days, I don't know if you guys know where Hooters is.
Yeah, Chango's is beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful club.
Beautiful space.
Beautiful. It
Beautiful
was
club.
very small. It was like a classy, like a kind of like a jazz bar.
Like a supper club.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think the owner of Babalu's
Okay.
sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. I'm like conscious of time and that we have to get through everybody for all these questions. So I can only do like one story per person.
Yeah,
right
we
now.
need 5 hours to talk about the stories, you know?
I know. Yeah.
Next time.
Okay, Paula.
I have to categorize myself with Angelo. It's not clear to me when my first social dance experience. What are you laughing at, Angus? Anyways, it has to be somewhere between Puerto Rico, Plaza Flamingo, and Berlin. So one of those three. I was in university, and it has to be one of those three. And I remember my first times going was with Mo, R.I.P. Mo. I miss ya. It was with Mo. I remember going around with Mo, and that's when I met Renee and that whole gang, and Frank Vision and Renee, and they were all on the scene back then.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And what was that other? There was a Latin ballroom guy as well, Abby Mina. So Abby Mina.
Oh my
Frank
God,
Vision.
Abby.
Abby.
Back in that,
Wow.
yeah.
I saw
I
Abby.
remember Abby Mina. That was back in the day. Okay. Teddy.
Oh no. So okay, I remember the first time. It was before the crossbody lead days. Okay. So I went to this place, I think somewhere in Christie, Roomba night. It was a little rough.
Roomba nights. Yeah, Christy and Bloor.
Yeah, so the first time I thought, I maybe just knew a few steps, like not that much. And I remember I asked two girls to dance, and one of them said, I'm almost sure in Spanish, now that I reflect on it, it's kind of like a little not so nice. It was, "Are you Chinese? Can you dance?" That's what I remember that you said. And then they said no and went to Oscar. Right? Right? And then, but 2 years later they were pregnant, so it doesn't matter, right? So that was it. That was my story.
Wow.
Not very eventful.
Wow. Hola, DJ Cisco. Did I go through everybody? Yes? I think I did, yes?
What about you, Jen?
My first time, I actually went. I was in the Dominican Republic on vacation, and that was when I fell in love with the music. And somebody who worked in the hotel in the Dominican had heard about El Rancho from all of the tourists. And so when I came back to Toronto, I went to El Rancho on a Friday night with a friend for dinner because I didn't believe that there was salsa dancers in Toronto. And we asked the waitress, and we said, you know, is there actually like salsa dancing later? And she's like, yeah, come back like after 11. So we left and we came back around midnight, and we walked, you know, down, like, you know, when you pass the restaurant, they have all like the neon lights. And I remember it was like, whoa, it was like this, it was like heaven. It was like, I walked in and it was just, everybody was salsa dancing. And that was it. I was hooked. So yeah, definitely El Rancho was my first nightclub, and then probably Berlin and like Sabor Latino. And this was before Plaza didn't exist at this point. Plaza wasn't even open yet. Yeah, many years ago. Okay, and if anybody wants to add anything, or so this is kind of connected a little bit. Tell us your favorite place to go dancing, like back in the day, like from then until now, or let's say from then until like not as close to then. What was your favorite place to go dancing, Jason?
I think for me, I think I speak for all of us. My favorite place was Babalu's.
Rest
All the
in
way.
peace, Babalu.
Yeah, hands
Yeah.
down, Babalu's was the best place. Great floors,
Yep.
amazing.
There's still something I think that was unique about Berlin and having live music on the regular though as well. So for me, it's kind of, although I preferred Babalu, I still am a little bit nostalgic for, you know, what used to happen at Berlin.
Yeah, the live music
Yeah.
in Berlin.
Yeah.
That's like,
Yeah,
that was the best part.
yeah. Live bands every Tuesday. Can you imagine, right? Like, imagine it was a huge club. I mean, the club could fit like 500 people, and it would be packed on a Tuesday night with a live band.
The lineups. Remember the lineups during
Lineup.
competition time? crazy.
Lineup.
Can I ask a clarification question? So
Yeah.
when you're saying back in the day, were Alley Cats and Lula, like, did they exist at the time?
Nope.
No.
No. So if you think back to like 30 years ago, it was really just El Rancho, Sabor Latino, which was like St. Clair and Lansdowne.
Mhm.
And then there was like the Colombian place that Giovanni was telling us about. Like there was a couple of little places.
Rumba night.
Rumba nights.
La
Rumba
Classique.
nights at Fleur Christie.
At that time too.
La
La
Classique was
Classique.
after. La
There was-
Classique was like, La Classique was a
96.
couple of years later.
La
Where was,
Classique came around
what was it?
96.
What was that name?
But I
back?
started dancing in like 91.
Back then, there was still Las Brisas that were
La
Las
down
Brisa,
on
Brisas.
Milvan,
La Brisa.
in Milvan,
Yes.
where they would
Las
pay,
Yes.
Brisas, yeah.
they used to pay people to go.
Las Brisas.
Was that
And then,
place
yeah, La
called,
Classique.
That was actually one of the first clubs, and more on the north side of the city. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, there was
Las Brisas.
the big clubs were Berlin or El Rancho, but on the north of the city was Las Brisas, and that was also a huge hangout back in the days as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
Where-
do you remember there was like, so then like after that, there was, I mean, Babalu, the original Babalu was in a different location. It was still in Yorkville, but it was on Cumberland,
Mhm.
and it was smaller.
Okay.
So, and then they opened up the Babalu that everybody knows. And that's when Chango came out. And then there was, what was the
Convento
one in
Rico.
Cabbagetown? Convento Rico has been around for many years.
There,
Cerveceria?
there was a club at Keel and Wilson at the hotel.
Yes,
Yeah.
LA Hollywood.
LA
Yeah.
Hollywood.
Hollywood.
Yes.
LA Hollywood, the
I
one with the
competed
big
LA
tunnel.
Hollywood.
The tunnel.
Giovanni, you and I competed against each other there a couple
There
of
you
times.
go, brother.
Peter, my dad was teaching in LA Hollywood.
Other
There
than
was
that, there
also-
was also Latin Fever, and then there was that Polish club out in Mississauga. I forgot the
That
name.
one's still
Yeah.
there. Frigata.
Oh,
Frigata.
Frigata.
Yeah, that was-
Frigata's still there.
What about the one on
There was
Young
also-
Street, just north of Shepherd? Remember it was there for a little while too?
Park Avenue.
Park
Park
Avenue.
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 Park Avenue then
Avenue.
moved on to Woodbridge.
Yes.
Park
There
Avenue
was
was in
also
multiple places.
Baccarat. Do you guys remember Baccarat?
Oh,
Yeah.
Baccarat, yes.
Yeah.
Bathurst and
Baccarat,
DuPont.
and then yeah, and then what was the place? I think Javier, you would know this. There was a place. It was in the Le Classique days that we would go to on a Wednesday.
Yes.
That was across from the Manulife Center.
Well, there was a couple because you had the Island Club in Ontario Place, which was
No,
Wednesday
no, no.
nights open.
No,
and then
this
there
was
was
like all year
Panorama.
long.
Panorama was
Panorama? I thought Panorama did a
No.
little bit. No.
No, this was a club, a small club on street level, on that street right across the Manulife Center, and it was Wednesday night,
The
and
former
it was the
Babalu.
only night.
Where is
Pardon?
his Manulife Center?
Former Babalu.
Like Young and Bloor.
The former Babalu's. was the
No, it wasn't the
No,
former
no.
Babalu.
Wasn't that place called the Cozy Corner?
No,
Oh,
That's
was
not
I actually think it was a sports
remember.
bar. Actually think it was a sports bar, but
I'm trying to
Also-
remember. I
also,
don't
I
think I
think-
went there.
No.
I'm sure you did. I'm sure you and Evie went there. I remember you guys, but
This is what happens
Back
when you
in
let
the
a bunch of
day-
old people talk. This is what happens.
I think the other thing I wanted to let people know, because this is when I first started, maybe not, I don't know about Angus and Caryl as much in that time, but when I first started dancing, you got dressed up. All the women wore dresses and skirts, and the men wore suits.
There was
And you got
actual
dressed
dress
up, and the
clubs.
only actual dress up, and the only time you did not dress up was on like Wednesday night. Wednesday night, you would go to the sports bar and you would go in jeans, but the other nights you were dressed up.
There was
And there
dress
was a
codes.
place to go. Yeah, and there was a place to go every single night of the week except Monday, and Monday was laundry day. What was that?
There were Mondays. Eventually, Panorama started Mondays, and
Yeah.
then
No, wasn't the bar the Frank used to have back in the
Alley Cat.
days?
Ali
Oh,
Alley
no,
Cat.
No,
Alley
no.
Cat. No,
The
not
one that
Alley
was on a
Cat.
corner
was on a corner,
Eglinton,
Young and
Embassy
Eglinton.
Cafe.
Oh, yes.
Eglinton, east of west of
What
Yon.
was it
Embassy
called?
Cafe.
Tango,
Cafe
Tango.
something.
Embassy Cafe.
Something
It was
Cafe.
on a corner.
Embassy Cafe.
Yeah.
Embassy Cafe.
That was the
that's
Monday.
Yeah.
And there was another one called Cafe Diplomatico, Cafe Diplomatico, or something like that.
Yeah,
I think
so-
from a
Forget
historical-
about bank.
From a historical perspective, the thing that is different from then is that there was somewhere to go almost every night of the
Very
week.
nice.
Sorry, guys. Can some of you mute yourself? Who has children? Can you mute yourself? Sorry,
So
there's a lot of
I'm-
background
Tennis
noise.
kids.
So I'm saying that what's different back then compared to now is that there was somewhere to go dancing every night of the week, and you could go out, and we did go out every night of the week.
Yep.
Versus
We did.
now, we
We
will
did.
go out once or twice a week. No, it was like every night we went out back then.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think
But there was still
Yeah, and we
places to
would
go
stay
now. Like before
It's
the
just-
pandemic, there were places every night.
Like
Absolutely.
regulars,
Yeah.
though. You would see the regulars every night.
every single
Every
night.
I mean, the
think there
regulars
are-
were an older crowd, yes.
No,
Yeah.
the regulars were, if you,
And-
I don't know, like 20s, 30s. That was the regular,
Yeah.
university to 30. That was the regulars crowd.
Yeah, we went out. I remember like working summers and like I would teach dance and gymnastics all day, then go teach dance classes to my salsa students at night, then go out dancing until 2 a.m, and then get up and do it all over like 6 nights a week.
There's a
And
question.
people are like, why don't you go out dancing? So did somebody ask a question? Did everyone perform together on the same team ever? Yes. Well,
Pretty-
most of us,
Pretty close.
Aside from me,
Pretty close.
I didn't go as far back.
aside
as
from
that.
Teddy.
I think you guys have a video.
Right, right.
Carol,
We
right?
have a video.
I do.
So Giovanni and I started teaching together at Berlin, and we started running workshops after we had gone to our first salsa congress in 1999. And then when we went to Puerto Rico that summer, we decided to start a dance team, which was Los Osómonos. And Paula and Jose were on that team. Angus was on that team. Jason was on that team.
Paulita.
Yeah, she said.
Pardon?
Sorry,
She's a
Paulita and
Paula.
Jose.
Paula and Jose. Evie, who's not here tonight, she was on that team.
Acha.
Sasha, Trione,
Karen.
who else?
Anna.
Say that
Bon,
again.
Bong.
Bon.
Bong Gonzalez.
Jen, that's a
Karen
picture from you.
Trujillo. Karen Trujillo.
Karen
Karen.
Trujillo. She was actually with us when we decided to start this team. And so we all danced together. Jason was partners with Karen Trujillo, and we still have a couple of videos of that team. It was Run Can Can.
Oh my gosh.
Jen, look, I found
Angus
it.
still remember the whole routine. So
Oh my God, Javier's showing pictures.
I still have the costume.
The costumes, those red costumes. Oh
Look at
my
that.
gosh.
Wow, look at that.
This was the entertainment magazine that everyone used to go and get.
Yes,
We had
Picante with Jimmy Bosch. Picante.
Yeah.
Back in the days.
Oh my God.
And this
Salsa
one
Team
is from
Canada.
the
No, Jasmine.
Congress.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me just say. Jasmine's asking, was this Salsa Team Canada? No, this was before Salsa Team Canada. This was Los Salsomonos that Angelo and I started. And
Gio and you started.
Giovanni, me.
what did I say? Sorry, I said Los
Angela.
Salsomonos.
Me.
Angelo. So sorry, Giovanni. And then
It's
after
okay.
that,
It's Torres. It's good.
that's true. After that, Sonia started Salsa Team Canada in Montreal, and she had dancers from across Canada that did a routine together one year at some congresses. But that was after. That was much later.
Hey,
Okay.
Gio and Angus, do you still have the shoes?
100%, man.
Do you really?
We're gonna
I'm
die
not
with
really-
you.
Oh, Rachel has the shoes. The two-tone.
I don't have my
Jose still has
shoes.
the shoes?
The two-tone shoes. I still have my shoes, Jen.
I don't have those shoes.
Angus, you still
They
got
come
your-
from they
No.
came from LA.
Yes,
They
they
were
were from
bought
LA. It
in
was a brand
LA.
from LA. Yes.
Oh, they were
We were
beautiful
so
shoes.
proud of those shoes, guys, because you couldn't buy dance shoes in Toronto at that time.
They were so beautiful.
And so they were like sparkly and they had sequins and they were like sexy. And at the guys, sorry, mute yourself if you're not talking. Okay. Okay, can I move on to another question? Does everybody kind of agree it was Bubbaloo? And yes, we all liked the live music at Berlin.
Yeah.
Are we all kind? Anybody
Lovely.
think like no, something totally different? We're all okay with that? Okay. We still mourn Bubbaloo, and every time we are together, we talk about Bubbaloo. Like I think anytime, you know, a bunch of us are.
Maybe can you describe what Babalu was? So that maybe some of them have never heard of it.
So Bubbaloo was a small place in Yorkville, and it was kind of underground, kind of like a basement level, and it wasn't big. So the great thing about a small club is that it feels packed all the time, which gives it an energy and it gives it a vibe. They always had good DJs.
Excuse me.
Giovanni was one of them. They always had good DJs.
I'm gonna bring you something.
As he leaves.
Giovanni and I taught there for years. And every night had a different flavor. So Wednesday night was like Salsero night. Oh
This is
my
for
God,
example,
he had the
Babalu.
sign. Nubia gave that to you? You stole it?
This is what
Oh
it
my
used to
God.
be on Yorkville Street, the big signs.
Yes.
So
Wow.
no, it
Wow.
was given to me by Nubia, and Pilar gave me the other
The
one.
owner.
I had two of those.
They were the owners.
For sale, so
Wow.
I'm gonna put them on auction. So if you guys want it,
No, keep that.
That is so cool, Gio.
I have
That's
I had two of them.
Wow,
Anyway,
that's
so
great.
that's the memory.
So
Keep
the
going.
vibe, was that every night was different. So Wednesday was like the hardcore salsa dancers. And then like Friday and Saturday was like the party people that wanted to go and like meet people, and they would play like all different kinds of music, and they would play top 40 and like a song, and as well as salsa and bachata, but it still was like kicking. It was like always a vibe. And then Sundays was their Cuban night. And you just knew that anytime you went, you would know people, you would see people that you knew. There was people to dance with, and they always had a vibe. I don't know how to explain it. Like there was always an energy to the space. I don't know how else to say it.
It's
Well, it's
actually
also a lot of people who I think that a lot of dancers felt that energy, and it just became a regular spot for aficionados of salsa dancing, period. And so I think that elevated the experience in the sense that if you went on a Wednesday night, you were sure to have a good dance, or you were sure to dance with some of the best dancers on the scene. You always saw the teachers, the instructors, the people who were dancing like 6 nights a week, right? So that gave it the vibe, because people went because they were serious about salsa dancing. That's what they wanted.
Yeah.
That's what they came there for, right?
One of the things, actually, I was chatting with Nubia a few days ago. And,
she was the owner, guys. Nubia and
yeah,
Pilar.
Nubia and Pilar were 2 ladies from Colombia that they were the owners of Babalu. So
good food too,
we talked for an hour. Anyway, so one of the things she told me about Babalu, which I asked, what was her idea behind Babalu? So her idea behind Babalu, creating Babalu, was to have a club where everybody can go. So she want to keep that club as a family club. So for example, as she says to me, it was more like, okay, I can bring my parents to have fun here, to sit down and have a meal. So that's why I think that says a lot about what is Babalu and why we miss it, why we love it so much, because they create this atmosphere that it was like to make us feel like home. If you guys notice, Babalu was, I think, the only club that didn't have any lights effects in the dance floor.
Right.
They
it
don't.
wasn't a
They
nightclub, guys.
So no,
it was more of it was a restaurant with a big dance floor. They would
very lounge,
floor, but it was
amazing
lounge.
food.
So you could have dinner, you could order drinks, and
the dance floor was super small.
Yeah.
But
super small with a pillar in the center, a huge pillar in the center of the room that you would bump into all the time. But they had places to sit, you could hang out. There was a patio in front that you could go outside if it was too hot. And there was something about going downstairs that was like, I don't know, it's like you're entering this like private underworld club, like a private club.
Can I say something like when I first started going, by the time I started, there were a whole bunch of dancers who were already like very experienced. So for me going into that world, every week I could go there and be inspired by all of them. So back then, there wasn't performance classes, there wasn't competitions really. No. So what there was social dancing. And for me to gain my exposure to flavor, like that's where you really found your voice, and you would watch people and be like, oh yeah, like that was so cool. Like, and you would try things out, and it was a place where you could learn from each other. You would people would watch a couple dancing and you'd be like, wow, that was so cool. So it was all about the experience of enjoying, being inspired, learning from others. That was such an important part of my experience. Anyways.
Yeah. And then I think from my experience I was already a teacher at that time, all the other advanced dancers and teachers and pros would come. So then you could, as a teacher, you also need to be inspired by your peers. You need to dance with your peers and people that are better than you. So there was always people to dance with. And then whenever people would come from out of town, they would always go to Babalu. Somebody just mentioned, Giovanni and I used to always have our birthday party together at Babalu, because we're 2 days apart, our birthdays. And so it was always like this big birthday bash. And
after it becomes like we had to start saying our ages. So then we say, forget it, no more parties.
Those nights
Somebody's asking, why don't they reopen Babalu? That the owners just, they decided to change their lives. Nubia moved, she opened a retreat center, didn't she?
Yeah, she actually, that was one of the questions I asked. And they have, after Babalu, some people ask this question all the time. After Babalu closed down, there was a lot of people coming to ask them to sell the franchise. They got a big offers, and they says it wasn't even the money. And her response to why she didn't pass it on or reopen it was because after so many years, it was the time to close it. And for her to pass it along to somebody else that could keep, it wouldn't be the same as a having it somebody own it and do different things in that and Babalu. So
Mm.
for her, it was like she started and she wanted to end at that time, and that's why they didn't want to sell it or reopen it again.
I will also say they basically closed it because Hazelton Lane developed that property. So they tore down the entire building. So if you guys are on Yorkville right now, besides the one hotel, there's like this big path entrance into Hazelton Lane where there's a coffee shop. And that's where Babalu used to be. There used to be old buildings there, and Babalu was in the basement.
And it
So
was the
wasn't
only
that
one
they-
who knocked down. It
Yeah.
was, it's
So-
curious, but the only
Yeah.
building that they get rid of was exactly that Babalu, and the second floor after second and third floor after that.
I think
The
it
other
also
thing,
with location. I think location for Babalu was phenomenal.
Oh, it's
Right.
perfect. Yeah.
Perfect location.
yeah, it was across from the subway. It had parking. The other thing to keep in mind too about Babalu, like people ask why was it so special, is that I don't know if you guys realize, but most of their staff were there for a decade. Like they didn't have turnover like most restaurants and most nightclubs. They had the same staff for years. So
Yeah.
all their bartenders, their chefs, their doormen, everybody was part of that family. And so you saw the same people all the time. Oh, we miss Babalu. Sheila just posted somewhere in the chat.
The
So
other thing, Jen, if I can add, the other thing that I loved about Babalu's was how open they were to experimentation, because they were so established that they were willing to experiment with a lot of DJs. Like Latin Roots was huge, and that opened the doors to a lot of other movements at that time, right? Because they allowed the DJs to start playing vinyl. The vinyl movement that exists right now is because Babalu's was very open to giving that to their DJs.
Yes.
Nobody else was doing it, right?
Yeah.
And so
On
Babalu's,
Wednesdays.
yeah. So
Alvaro.
Babalu's, yep.
Alvaro was one of the big,
DJ Alvaro,
the first
wow.
DJs that used to play
Vinyl.
vinyls
Latin
at
Roots.
Babalu on Wednesdays. And
Yeah,
basically,
awesome.
but Alvaro has a very unique taste for music, and it was for me, I mean, fascinating. I'm speaking on a personal level because obviously the taste of music is very different from every DJ. Obviously, I've been hearing DJ Carlitos for a long time, so having Alvaro bring in something completely different, it was actually a good entertainment. And I remember he has his turntables right in the middle of the dance floor, and you know how many times we kept hitting his table. So, but that was what Javier says. You know, Babalu give opportunities to I mean, including myself, to be one of their resident DJs there, and bring our own flavor. There was the place for everybody to gather and hang out, and it was a very touristic place. You know, many celebrities, people don't know this, but many celebrities used to go to Babalu, and because it was in Yorkville, obviously, it was entertaining for all of us. Baseball players and basketball players used to go there.
But a lot of the things about Babalu's, Gio, was honestly you keeping the music alive, man. Nowhere else that I used to go out to, I would hear cha-cha and see people just dance to this amazing style of music. Even me, who like loves salsa, I didn't know much about it, but it was you guys who kept pushing that cha-cha vibe on Wednesdays, which I love so much. So thank you guys so much for that.
I love that you say that, so that Babalu was like the Cheers to the Latin community, you know, where everybody knows your name. Somebody asked, hold on, I'm just going to go through, tell the owners to reopen Babalu. That won't happen. They won't reopen. I think after this crazy time we're going through, maybe somebody will be inspired to open up a place like Babalu, because I think we need it more than ever. Sheila suggested, so our studio, we have the third floor in our building and the basement. And I think because we were talking about how Babalu was in the basement, Sheila's like, let's turn our basement into Babalu. But also somebody asked, I love that analogy, Cisco. Somebody asked about cha-cha. Yes, back then we played, definitely it was more salsa, more cha-cha. Babalu also played merengue and cumbia,
Cumbia.
and like they played everything. You know,
Everything.
it wasn't just like now. They played everything.
Mhm.
Obviously, way back then, it was a lot less bachata. It was more salsa and cha-cha. Somebody asked what's the closest thing to Babalu in Toronto these days.
Nothing.
Lula. Lula has that
Yeah.
vibe sometimes.
Lula has that
Not
vibe
even
sometimes, but it's
close.
a different vibe. Lula doesn't have the dancer vibe.
Yeah.
Lula has the live music.
I think,
Um,
sorry,
I would almost describe
Lula is
Lula
more close to
the
Berlin.
degrees. To Berlin, yeah.
Berlin would
It
be,
doesn't have that feel of Babalu of like
How,
family.
imagine Dover Courthouse, like on a
And
Friday or
Lula.
Saturday night, but smaller, a lot smaller, more dressed up. More dressed
More
up,
dressed
right?
up.
Because people are like in track pants at Dover Courthouse on some nights.
Yeah.
But
And tables and restaurants.
yeah, it's a
tables and
it's a
food.
restaurant. So it's hard to replicate that.
It's like elegant.
Latin
It was
vibe.
very elegant. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was very elegant, but very fun.
And that's the part that's missing too, right? But when I'm comparing Babalus to Lula, is that family part, that family aspect where
Yeah.
to Lula, people go to celebrate their bachelorette, they go celebrate their graduation dinner.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
see all ages, which is
Yeah.
very different. Berlin was a bit of a meat market, and that was a big problem there too, right? Because it
Have
was
you-
all the same like
Yeah.
age group. You would never see anyone. It was for a while. It did start getting a big shift where you see much older people, much younger people. But for a long time, it was always people between a certain age group.
Yeah, but also
Yeah.
like Javier, like back then, I would say that there wasn't much competition on specific nights that
Oh, yeah.
events that, so it would filter not just Latinos and dancers and salseros from everywhere. Everyone would go to Babalu's because that was the
Can-
place to be, right?
Yeah.
And
Can I say something, Cisco?
yeah,
Actually,
no
I think Cisco, you just brought up a really good point that Babalu always had, because, okay, 30 years ago, the clubs were almost all Latinos.
Yep.
There weren't a lot of Canadians dancing salsa 30 years ago. And then as it changed and as all different people from all different backgrounds started dancing salsa, there was a slight shift and the style of dancing changed. So there was a shift of like hardcore salsero places and then like neighborhood family, like Colombian places and that type of thing. So the community got a little bit divided. And I think Babalu was the one bridge where it would be salseros and Latinos and this like crazy like vibe all together. But a lot of the
also-
other clubs was much more separated.
Yeah, and Babalu's had like nice harmony of a mixture of everything pretty
Yeah.
much.
Everything.
And also one of the biggest things, sorry, one more thing about Babalu, that what it makes a big difference, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys will agree with me, is that in Babalu, as soon as you get in, you know almost everyone, and you can basically say hello to the same person and say good night at the end of the night or when they're leaving, because it was so small, we can see each other.
Small.
But
Yeah.
versus going to El Rancho or going to, let's say, Berlin or Lula, you see that person once and probably you're gonna spot it again. So that's why Babalu was like a more cozy and you can actually hang out with that person or that people. I don't know. It was like family.
Yeah. I think some people just were reminding us about the courthouse, which was another great place on Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right, Paulette. Now it's the Rosewater Supper Club.
There's one
then
place
the
I used to love, Jennifer, but I don't think it was that, I would say, vintage as the clubs that we're talking about. But I used to go to On the Curve every Wednesdays. That was kind of a little bit of
Mississauga, no?
Yeah, my escape on the West End, and then I would literally leave On the Curve at like 12:30, rush downtown to get to Babalu's for the last hour because I knew that's when the salsa Gio was gonna turn it up. So that was my experience on Wednesday nights, pretty much.
Wow. Dimitri, it is you. Oh my God, guys, Dimitri was on one of my first dance teams. Oh my God, hello. Are you still in Hong Kong?
Oh,
you're muted. You can text, okay. Oh my God, so nice to see you. yeah, Let's Bank was another big one. Teddy's reminding us it would take us 15 minutes to go to the washroom at Babalu because you had to talk to everybody as you were going to the bathroom, and the bathrooms were packed. Wow, so nice. Okay, I'm gonna go.
Who remembers the empanadas from Plaza?
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah, yeah. So we would go salsa dancing, and then afterwards we would go and
after
have
el rancho.
empanadas. After El Rancho, we'd get empanadas. So hungry. Okay, I feel like we answered a couple of questions with all this. Okay, here's a question. What makes, I don't know which question to ask first. Are you guys okay to go over a little bit overtime?
Well, that time is soon. I'm joking. Go ahead.
Okay. How do you feel the scene has changed now than when you first started salsa dancing? Could be good, could be bad, could be neutral, could be just like very, very quick. I'm gonna ask Angus and Caryl to go first.
Okay, I have an answer for this. Okay, so back in the day, at least when we started dancing, there wasn't a lot of instruction or a lot of focus on the technique, the way we have right now. Like everything can be broken down. There's so many techniques of X, Y, and Z, spin classes, whatever. Back then, I think the focus was more on flavor and the way you express yourself, your musicality, that kind of thing. And we got that because of the way things were back then, where you social dance a lot. You learn so much social dancing. So I feel like back then, flavor was, if you were gonna dance, like Babalu was full of flavor. That's what it was. So fast forward to today, people are more technically able and have other experience. But I think sometimes we're so busy with those things and not finding our flavor, not finding our craft or our voice in the social network. We're becoming maybe we're not giving ourselves the chance to develop that flavor in ourselves. I find that's different. Like, think about it back then, guys. Full of flavor, Babalu. That's what it was. That's what I think is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'll just kind of add to that. Like, I think that it's changed in many dimensions, but a lot of times the way it's changed has been cyclical, right? So like the constant in, for instance, the technique or the form of the dance is that we used to dance in that sort of circular cumbia, Cuban-esque style, then it turned linear, but now you see people reverting back to trying to add more Cuban style into their dance. And so it's nice to see that the dance isn't something that's static, even though some people resist it in a given time period, but ultimately it continues to evolve. And I think that's what keeps many of us that have been around for 30 years, for instance, still interested, because it's not the same thing. It would be boring if it was exactly the same thing. Yes. And so I think sometimes it goes, a lot towards the technique dimension, and then sometimes it goes back to the flavor and the Afro or the folkloric roots. And of course, like most things in life, it swings on that pendulum. So I think that's one dimension. And then the other dimension that for me that is kind of particularly important is similar to what Carol's describing, but also I think captures the magic of a place like Babalu and the clubs that were around, quote, in the old days. And that is, there was a very social aspect to it. And so becoming part of the community was a thing. Like when you first showed up to Babalu, you maybe felt intimidated by everybody and you didn't know everybody. But after, a few weeks or a few months, depending on how many nights a week you went, you got to know people and you could feel them kind of accept you into the club, so to speak. And that's what made you feel like you're part of the community. And I think it's part of what created that magic, why you wanted to go back.
Is it not like that now, do you feel?
Yeah, as opposed to now, I feel like sometimes it's a little bit transactional, right? Like, and sometimes by nature, like how everybody else was describing, the places now are a lot larger. And so you can't see everybody, you can't get to know everybody. And, the social that is at a particular location might be once a week versus Babalu is, 5 nights a week. So there's things that prevent it, but I do think it's a bit different.
Yeah, thank you. Paula?
I love what Angus and Caryl says, and I agree. Although I think that part of that phenomenon was because of the way salsa evolved in Toronto. I mean, when we all first started, there weren't any teachers. There weren't anybody really to learn from. And it was like, you got to make it up as you go and just do what you feel is right, or add that sabor, add your own sabor. So we learned off of each other. We learned just by dancing and learned by feeling the music. And we didn't have an opportunity to actually take instruction. And I think that has changed a huge amount, because a lot of us left Toronto to learn from international instructors and bring that back to Toronto.
I think I'm going to interrupt to explain to people, this was before YouTube existed, before social media existed. There was no Facebook.
There was no
So-
YouTube.
No.
There was nothing. So when
there was-
Giovanni and I went to our first Salsa Congress in 1999,
No,
We're
we
like-
went before that. Washington, D.C.
was 99, no?
Was 99 or 98?
98 was
98.
DC, was it? DC 98?
98 was DC, I think. Yeah, 99 was, no, I don't know.
Was,
Anyways,
was it DC before Salsa Web Convention? Because Salsa Web Convention was in 2000.
yes, it was before. So when we went to these places to learn, it was our first time seeing other styles. It was our first time seeing these people who were like master instructors. And it was like, now students can go online and they can just look at YouTube and see dancers from all over the world. Oh, this is how people are dancing in Spain. These are the dancers in Italy. We didn't even know there was salsa in Italy back then because you had no access to them. Sorry, Paula,
I'd like
interrupt.
to
I
add,
just wanted to bring that up.
sorry, and I wanted to add that Rose, do you guys remember, obviously, Rose?
Rose
with,
knows.
Rose Knows, Tio Salsa. That was the first actually website that was dedicated to the salsa scene. And she went through like, she had every club, every DJ on there. She used to go take pictures, and that was the first like social network that we had, right?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
a lot of people used to communicate through there. And then Evie and I, we had our salsa thing, which was more dedicated to the history, right? And to actually talking about the music and the roots and everything. But we did have
thing, Javi, our salsa
Yeah,
thing. That's what
our salsa
Our
thing.
salsa thing.
Carol wrote for that for a while. Actually, it was pretty cool. And yeah, so we did have a bit of a social network at the beginning before, because we didn't have all
But-
the tools we have now.
But this was also a few years after we had
Yeah.
already been teaching.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
It was hard to share.
But something I wanted to add is, it's like, just to kind of echo what Jen is saying, is that when we went to these conventions, when we went to DC, when we went to the first New York Salsa Congress in the Catskills, remember that trip? I'll never forget that trip. But it's like a whole world was opened up to us. Like, I was like in awe of all the dancers from all different places in the world, and all the different workshops that you could take. And you were doing salsa from moment of waking till like you weren't sleeping. You were doing salsa, like just consuming it. And I think that was something that we were so excited to be able to bring that back to Toronto and to be able to share that with everybody.
And remember, you had to know the material because we didn't have camera phones back then.
That's
So when
right.
you learned the choreography, you
We
had
didn't
to
have cell
remember.
phones.
You had to remember. So I remember on one of the trips, Jen, I think I went with
I
you
would write
guys.
it down.
Yeah.
In
like,
Washington,
remember
Carol.
this, and then you remember that shine. I'll remember this shine. You
Yes.
remember that turn pattern, because there was
Yes.
nothing to remember.
Yes. And I remember, I mean, guys,
exactly
just
what
for
we
some
did
of you,
there.
to put some of this in perspective, I remember when Giovanni, and it was me, Giovanni, DJ Carlitos, Sabrina, and Stephanie Gernon. And we went to Washington. That was the first Congress. I think it was 98. I know Puerto Rico was the very first Congress ever. We went to the second year of the Puerto Rico Congress, but we went to Washington in April. Then we went to New York in May, in New York City. Then we went to LA at the end of May. And then we went to Puerto Rico that July. 4 Congresses in 3 months that we paid for of our own money. It wasn't like now when everybody asks, oh, I'm an amateur performer, so I should get a free hotel and a free, it was like, we paid for everything.
Can I show something, Jen? I had these.
Yeah.
Aw.
Oh, look at that. That's all of us from like so many years ago.
That's Washington, DC. I think that was Washington.
You didn't come. You weren't in Washington with us, so I'm not sure which.
This is
Yeah, that is Washington. That was the second time.
That
The
was the
second
second
That
time.
was
time.
second year. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was the
Yeah,
second
yeah.
year
We
in
had gone-
Washington.
Giovanni and Sabrina and Carlos and Stephanie had gone the year before.
Wait,
I
I have
forgot
another
that we
one.
went to Washington.
I have another one.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
You know what I like too? That they're
Amazing.
actual photos. Nobody's like bringing out a phone.
No, it's photos.
It's a
It's
wrinkly
photos.
photo.
But
Caryl and
I
Gio
was
and
gonna say-
Marika.
Yeah, I was gonna say something about shoot. Oh yeah, okay. So just to put some of this in perspective for everybody. So that first year that Giovanni and I went to Washington, we came back and we started teaching workshops. We were teaching how to do a crossbody lead because nobody had done crossbody leads before. So like we would teach a 2-hour workshop on like crossbody lead with an inside turn and maybe one more crossbody lead, maybe a little extra turn at the end. And that was a 2-hour workshop because nobody had done crossbody lead. It was like a whole different way of dancing than what we had seen before. So when we all started traveling, we all were inspired to bring different styles. So it just, yeah, but Caryl, I remember saying, you go take that workshop, you remember this part, I remember this part.
We
Oh my God.
the first time we went to Puerto Rico, adding to that, we basically party day and night because there was after parties until 7 a.m.
So 7 a.m. I would
in
leave.
Puerto
okay, you people
Rico
think,
in a
you people
nightclub
think
that has no windows, so it was
we didn't know it
completely
was
pitch
bright.
black. And as soon as you came out of there, it was hot and bright. And you feel, I always say this as a joke, but it's the truth. It feels like a Dracula come out during the day because it was so hot. You feel this heat and you're like sleepless. So we go eat and then sleep for 3 hours and wake up at 10 a.m. That was the first workshop until 5 p.m. So
And then do it all over again.
non-stop. And as some of you guys, okay, like what Caryl says, like, okay, I would tell Jen, okay, you take that workshop, I'll take this one. Okay, do you tape it? I tape it. So I have a video recorded at that time, and we tape every workshop, every show. And talking about YouTube, I want to add this to it. What I miss the most is that the creativity that happened at that time where there was no YouTube. Everybody that came from different countries were like
had different styles,
doing their own unique styles. Like for example, there was a team dancing, doing crossbody leads or dancing the bases with the right forward and the left back. See, that was their basics. And I was like, how you do that? So doing crossbody leads with dancing forward with the right, or people dancing like on every count. But that was a uniqueness of that. So, and as we keep looking into these themes and getting inspired, obviously it makes us who we are right now. Even you guys being part of Los Alzómanos, or you guys being a student. So it's a chain reaction. So you guys inspire other people, and your students probably right now are teachers or dancers. So everybody started from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
But those are beautiful memories.
Just Teddy had some great points here. I guess, Teddy, you want me to read them out, or you want to say them, Teddy?
Well, go ahead.
Okay. So Teddy was like, back in the day, there was no multi-level club lessons. Well, there kind of was. There kind of was, actually, but women rarely asked men to dance. There wasn't a lot of same-sex dancing, like same-gender dancing like there is now.
Yep.
You could dance on any timing for competitions. There was no social. It was nightclubs. You went to a bar. You went out to a bar to go salsa dancing. You didn't go to a dance studio. You didn't go to a church. You didn't go to a hall. You went to a nightclub. You went to a bar or a restaurant. You could dance in the tiniest spaces, absolutely. Smoking was allowed. We used to stink. Oh my God, I remember being at Babalu and people would be dancing with a cigarette in one hand and dancing with
Oh.
leading their partner in the other. And you would come home and your hair would smell, your clothes would smell. It was
Hate
so gross. And Paul Chivers was still alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul Chivers was a friend of ours that passed away. Does anybody else want to talk about the scene back then and back now? Because I have 2 more questions to finish up. Anyone?
I think, okay. One
Hold on, Giovanni.
Yes,
What?
go ahead.
Sorry, I just need to see if anybody else wants to add to that question before I change the question.
No,
We're good?
about your question related to the scenes, right? What's the
Yes,
difference?
but I was going to move on.
Okay.
Do you have one more thing
go
to
ahead,
add?
no worries.
Do you want one more thing?
By the way, for everybody, Jennifer and Giovanni have always been like this.
Always
For the
a
full
pleasure.
20 years I've known them. This is
Jennifer
how they
always
interact.
tried to
Always.
cut me up, but it's okay. I still love her.
Because you talk a lot.
Hey, I have to talk a lot. I'm the oldest.
This is true.
You're my children, you know?
This is true. So the question that somebody has just asked is, what do we think the post-COVID salsa scene is going to look like, especially at the very beginning? I think we all have very different beliefs about, I'm going to start with that one. I personally think, and I've been saying this for the past year, dance will always exist. Salsa will always exist. It's part of culture. It's not just something that we do as a hobby. It's cultural. It's something that many different Latino cultures all over the world grow up on. So it will always exist. And dance has existed since the beginning of time. It has survived thousands and thousands of years. It's how humans express. It's how humans interact. I really think, I know a lot of people like, I don't know if we're ever gonna salsa dance again. I think we will. And I think that salseros are always salseros. Once a salsero or salsera, always a salsero. And it might take some people longer than others. Some people are gonna have different comfort levels. Some people are going to maybe not feel comfortable right away, but the people who are comfortable are going to dance. And then slowly people will start dancing. And I will say, and I don't know if you guys are going to mind me saying this, but you know, I think you guys are all in Toronto or the vicinity of Toronto right now. I'm in Mexico, and there's socials here every week. People are dancing. They're dancing outside. There's 150 people, 200 people, and they're having socials. And they're having lessons, and dance goes on. And so some countries that are really locked down are not allowing it, and other countries are. But I just kind of want you guys to know that there's hope, because I teach here, and there's people come to the classes, and people come from all over the world, and they're taking classes, and they're dancing. So salsa will survive. Next. Somebody else give their opinion on the post-COVID salsa scene.
The optimist in me thinks that you're right, Jen. I think that once everybody, you know, in Toronto, for example, I think we're kind of officially concerned. Once the bulk of us have had the opportunity to get vaccinated and clubs open up, I think people will flock right back to the clubs. Number one, because once a salsero or salsera always, or bachatero or whatever, right? But also because I think now everybody's been deprived for so long, they're going to be craving it that much more, some physical interaction, right? And so I saw somebody post, I think it was David, something about, you know, will it be more shines? And I'm like, I don't know that it'll be the case, right? I think that people will very quickly go back to the comfort of what they always loved about salsa and bachata and all the other dances. And at least that's my fantasy or my hope.
I agree. People want human connection if they need it. And they may not, maybe they'll dance with less people in a night. Maybe they'll dance outdoors initially. Maybe, you know, I think it's gonna happen in stages, but.
And probably catching COVID might be the least of your worries. So, I mean.
I think Jen's right and Angus, I agree with them in the sense that I think salsa dancing, at least here in Toronto, has just paused. It's given people a chance I mean, giving people a chance, we didn't really have much choice, to kind of reflect on what dance means to you or what other things matter to you in your life. So will dance come back? Yeah, I would say most certainly. But there's going to be a transition period, and it's going to be different for a while. I think that's really what's going to happen, and people are going to make their decisions on whether or not they're comfortable with whatever processes are in place, whatever.
Yeah.
It'll
But
exist.
I will say, and I know Toronto is different and Canada is different, but people are dancing in Miami. People are dancing in Portland. People are dancing in Texas. It's not just Mexico. Like there's places all over the world right now where people are still dancing. There's a Congress, I think it's next week in Poland.
People are dancing in New York. All of the
People are dancing in New York. All the
New
dance
York,
studios
all
have
the
reopened
dance,
in New York.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
reopening with social
Yeah.
distancing.
Yeah.
So,
But
yeah.
they're also teaching
Fear-
partner work. They're
Yeah.
The difference is that there's different levels of fear and different
Yeah.
levels of whatever in different cities. And so because of that, people are going to transition at a different pace in different cities.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But I just want you guys to see
Yeah.
that there's other places that are salsa dancing already.
Yeah.
And yeah,
We
I
would've-
just,
Yeah. It's gonna
yeah,
continue.
everybody's craving. I will say this is, reminded me like how much I miss it. There was many years where I didn't go out social dancing a lot because I was tired. I was teaching a lot. I was working a lot. When you teach every night, I mean, I don't know, Caryl, you're like the queen because you can teach all week and then go out dancing every night. But after 25 years, I just was like, I can't do it anymore. So I didn't go out social dancing a lot. And I got to say, I regret it. I regret the nights I did not go out. And I don't have very many regrets in my life.
If anything changes, that will, right? Like people will stop with the excuses of, oh, I'm too tired, or like, I don't want to tonight.
Exactly.
Like everyone is going to want to for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Somebody's saying we can look forward to Salsa St. Clair again. I think, yes, everybody should, dance outside if you can. Somebody's saying it's our job to keep the salsa vibe going in some shape or form, even if you have to mask, or regardless of whether the numbers are 10 people or 100 people or 1,000. Bring it on, bring it outside. Yeah.
I can add to that, Jen. The other thing I think that is a big advantage of having been around the scene for a particularly long time is you've seen the ebbs and flows of when dance has gone up and down, clubs have come and gone, right? And the first time you go through it, it feels a little bit scary because you're like, oh no, there's not going to be any more dancing. And then it opens up again, right? It comes back. So I think that's the optimism comes sometimes from the experience of having gone through it.
Yeah,
So to speak.
Yeah. There's been so many times where students have asked me, oh, are there more clubs now than there used to be? Like, no, there was always clubs. There was always a place to go every night of the week, even 25 years ago. It's just that the clubs change and maybe the people change and maybe what you wear to the club changes. But I think a lot of people who've been in the scene less time see it as like, oh, it's like peaking right now, or, oh, now it's like dead. And I'm like, no, it's just always waving like that. It's constant. So lots of things. How did the dance scene, Jason's asking, how did the dance scene go from dressing up to just finishing a workout? I have no idea how that happened.
I think I know why. I think I know why for some is because when we started performing, we had rehearsals late. And so sometimes we would not plan on going out, but everyone's going to Babalu after rehearsal. So then you go and you kind of try to dress up your track pants, you dress up your leggings to make it okay to go out. But I think it started, at least from the regulars, like I don't think it was a first choice to dress like that. But then over time, we went into like the halls, like the church halls, and the vibe was so like,
different.
Yeah.
It was the regulars started dressing down, and then the bouncers would let you in because you were a regular. And so then the other people would be like, well, they're coming in running shoes and jeans, because I remember I still dressed up a lot, like past when other people would, if he would show up with jeans. Yeah, no. And Evie would show up with jeans and running shoes, and I'd be like, yo, where are you going? Like, I'd spend time ironing my pants. She's like, no, it's too tiring to get dressed up, right? So
Yeah.
we did. We kind of like relaxed it a little bit, but also because it used to be pretty like dressed up. Like they
Oh,
wouldn't
yeah.
let you, they wouldn't let you in the
Yeah,
club
they
if
wouldn't
you,
let you in.
yeah,
Well,
if you
also,
were wearing your shoes.
I think also when it switched to socials and places like Dover Courthouse, which yes, we forgot to mention Dover Courthouse because Stephanie ran that for so many years. Dover Courthouse, unfortunately, has been turned into a co-working space, so they will not be reopening after the pandemic. When you don't have bouncers at the door, like socials don't have bouncers. So originally we used to go out, Babalu had a bouncer. You had to pass the bouncer to get into the club, and you had to be approved by the bouncer to get in. But at a social, no one's approving you to get in. You just get in.
There was no dress code. There's
no dress code.
Exactly.
Tequila used to be one
Yeah.
of the ones that didn't care about the dress code either. I remember Tequila was one of those clubs where you could just go right after work.
But you know what, guys,
Yeah.
I think there's like certainly truth to all of those factors. But one other thing that I think maybe contributes to it as well is that because the dance has become more technical and sort of more athletic, and some people engage in it not so much as a culture, but as a support, right? They want to immediately perform. They want to immediately go to competitions. And so I see a lot of people who really approach it, for instance, at the social atmosphere, where they're there to basically work out, right? The dance is different. It's
Right.
a more athletic thing than the sort of Babalu, I want to look good, feeling fine, looking fine, make some connections kind of vibe, right? And so I think that that is also another dimension that kind of has led to that, or explains that.
Can I just tell all of you here right now that the next in-person Canada Salsa Congress that I have, you better all dress up. No white beaters and black track pants at the Congress next time. I want it to be like,
all the guys are wearing white shoes.
We're getting bouncers. I'm on it.
we have bouncers. I have bouncers.
Well, they're gonna enforce the dress code.
Kathy, I don't remember the bouncers at Babalu turning people away. I guess they did though. You're right.
They did.
Yeah, they did.
Quite a few while
There was
in
also a, yeah, so true. So I guess I have one last question. Kind of different, but what do you think, because we're part of this salsa world, this salsa scene, this, you know, it's kind of this underground community. What do you think is the most common misconception about the salsa community, or about salsa clubs, about going out salsa dancing? Because there's so many people that are new to the scene or who don't know of the scene, and they, you know, like they think, I don't know, we're all having sex together. Basically, I think that's one of the misconceptions. Oh, they dance so sexy, they must be all having sex together. No, we're just dancing with our friends and then we say bye.
Are you talking about in Toronto or generally?
I think generally.
Okay.
Jason, you had something. Jason? No? Oh, okay. Anybody want to comment on?
One simple thing, the volume of it, the fact that it is an incredibly huge scene in a world all on its own. I think that people have no clue the massive scene that exists, not just in Toronto, but in the world. Like, it's a thing. And I think that people, oh, that salsa thing or whatever. I just think that people have this huge misconception that it is not just a little thing or a fad. It is, like you said, Jen, a culture and a way of life. And it's just so massive. And it's like, you can't even fathom the volume of it. The fact that, you know, thousands of people attend the Canada Salsa Congress every year, like that's just unfathomable to some people, I think.
What's crazy, it is absolutely unknown to a lot of people. And when I first actually got into the scene in 2007, that was my very first Congress. And it was the Canada Salsa Congress. And to me, I'd never heard of it before. And I've been living in Toronto for so long. And when I first saw it for the very first time, I was blown away, having seen all the halls and like just filled with thousands of people just dancing salsa. And I never knew about it. It was crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of people, sorry, I just wanted to add that a lot of people that I've talked to over the years, they always think that salsa it's just one genre of music. It's they think that there's no distinction. So when I tell them, oh, that's a really good song, they're like, that's what you said about that other song. And I'm like, well, it's a different genre, it's a different year, it's a different musician. Like it's so deep and involved that people don't understand how much there is to learn about the music and the dancing, right? The steps. You guys were talking about how there used to be no disciplines. There was no 1 and 2 back then, right? And then you started talking 1 and 2, and then there's two, New York and Puerto Rican on 2. So there's so much to learn, but so much to love too. There's every day I learn something new about it.
I have something
Yeah.
too. I think people don't realize that it's all, I mean, in the social network, that it's actually improvised. A lot of people can't
Yeah.
understand the concept of, yeah, we're making up on the fly based on the music that's happening right now with the partner that I'm with right now in this moment.
Yeah. They're like, how do you know what to do that?
How do you know what to do? Exactly.
Yeah.
Or you've never danced with that person before? No, this is the first time I've ever danced with
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody mentioned in the comments another misconception is that you have to be a great dancer, an experienced dancer to go to a club. Totally not true. You don't need to know anything. You don't need to know anybody. Somebody else brought up a really good point that she was in Montreal and she decided to go to a nightclub by herself, a salsa club, and her friend was surprised that she would go alone. And I think that's a very different thing. Like I would never go to a regular nightclub by myself, but I would go to a salsa club by myself. We've
The
traveled.
only thing you need to know is manners to go to a social. You don't need anything except how to, treat another dancer with respect.
Yeah. Yeah. That was Jasmine just said that was the best part about salsa, that you could turn up alone and still get danced with. Any other common misconceptions about the scene?
So I feel as the scene has evolved, we need to really take care of those actual new people who are coming into the scene, right? And I find because so many schools are, throwing out all these dance teams, team here, team there, we lose the aspect of social dancing, right? Taking care, people want to have fun, right? And I just find that has gone down a little bit here in Toronto. I find, in terms of
Social dancing?
just accepting beginners into the scene a lot more, right? Let's say you're a performer, right? And I find a lot of performers they don't social dance. I mean, and great social dancers would I find a lot of great social dancers would not ask a beginner as much.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right.
I mean, I think people always, over the years, people have always thought it was kind of cliquey, and sometimes people weren't as open to beginners. And I think sometimes I don't really agree. I don't really think it's true, but I think I can see how they see that when they walk in and they see it. But maybe it's just talking to people.
I think that the scene has become more inclusive, at least because it was smaller before. I think that it was more cliquey before. It was more difficult. There were more kind of groups, and because the scene was smaller and there weren't many schools. And I think the fact that there are so many instructors out there who have students, that we encourage students and people to interact with each other, ask each other to dance, ask other people to dance. So I do believe, and I don't know if anybody else agrees with me here, that the scene is more inclusive today.
All the rejection has happened even back in the days. So it's nothing, this is not new. But as instructors, I think our job is to always encourage each and every one of them to be social, because what we're doing right now is a social dance. So that's how we start, and that's how we meet people and make them comfortable. So I know everybody goes to different levels, but I think it's also our job to let our students know that when you go social dancing, it's for you to dance with everyone. So you're not better than that person or that person. You're there to have fun, you know, and we should accept them. It's like when a stranger or a beginner student asks us to dance, we cannot say no. At least the males cannot say no. I cannot reject anybody, even if that person doesn't know how to dance. I'm going to enjoy that dance because, you know, I want that person to come back or to go and take lessons with somebody, to any of you guys or any of us. And that's up to us to maintain it that way.
From what I've heard, from when I compare other cities, Toronto probably has one of the most inclusive communities, because for nights, like say at Dover Courthouse, it's a place where dancers from every school, or even students, take classes from many schools, right? So I feel like we interact more, but at the same time, and I don't know, Jason, if you meant it this way, if you think about Dover, not Dover Courthouse, yeah, Dover Courthouse, there are some physical divides where, you know, the more experienced dancers are always near the DJ, and then more beginners are at the end. So maybe that the way that like experienced dancers tend to like to be near the music, tend to
Yeah.
kind of separate other people who aren't as familiar yet.
I think also the experienced dancers, we like to be on the edge of the dance floor because there's less people that are going to bump into and less people to bump into us. So I think we always like being on the edge. And also I think the more experienced dancers don't mind being watched. And so, you know, the less experienced or the beginner dancers or the more shy dancers are going to the back where they don't feel like they're being watched. And I think that's everywhere. I also think, I agree with you, Caryl, that I think the scene in Toronto, I think in general, oh, hi, Ramiro. Wow, these are like people I've known for like 25 years. I think the teachers in Toronto get along really well, because there's a lot of cities and a lot of scenes around the world where like this would not happen. What we're doing right now would not happen. The teachers would not all get together and hang out, and chat and discuss stuff, or, you know, go out to the same club and dance together.
Can I add? I have to say that I agree with Jason. I have to say that, you know, that the I've noticed, like, just before the pandemic, going to like El Rancho, right? You know, you used to see like a lot of regular club dancers. A lot of the club dancers now hang out at the studios and at the Dover Courthouse, whatever we want to call those places, right? And so just stop for a second and say, if you were a beginner, your first entry point would be a club, would be a rancho, would be a girls' night out, bachelorette party, go to a club, Rancho, Lula, and you know, since the club dancers have almost all disappeared, they've all gone towards like Dover Courthouse and Estonia House. Their entrance into the world is Rancho. For the uninitiated, like my first night was Babalu, and I was brought there by friends. But the thing is that, you know, Jason's right. Like you got, because a lot of people, when they say they want to start learning salsa, they might not want to make that big commitment of going to a studio, right? Like a package, like for several weeks. And they just want a one-off. I just want to try it that night, and I want a friendly experience. And I'm going to have to side with Jason, right? Like the scene has really broken up into a lot of separate parts. Like even at Dover Court, you've got bachata room and you've got the salsa room, and they don't mix. Like I rarely go into the bachata room at all. And the bachatero, they rarely cross over. So we're beginning to spread apart a little bit. We are.
I agree, Mark. I agree that like there never used to be separate rooms necessarily when we would go out dancing, and now there are, or congresses.
Even at our rancho, it was never so separated where both floors were playing such different types of music. Both floors were playing maybe merengue and salsa and cumbia at different times, so people could go and pick. But to have a bachata room and a salsa room was not like that.
Everybody knows I'm a huge bachata fan. I drink it a lot. but I do feel the need to say something kind of in their quote defense. And what I mean by that is, I think if I think back to the day when we used to dance, like, 15, 20 years ago in Babalu, why would we stay in the same room when bachata was playing? Number one, it was because maybe there wasn't as many. But the other reason is because bachata was very simple then. You didn't have that much to do. And so the 5 songs they played in a night was enough for you. That's all you had moves for. But now, as people have become very advanced with what they can do in bachata, you're not going to be satisfied with 4 songs for the whole night. So you want your own room so you can, do the things that you know how to do. So I understand why, for instance, they might want a dedicated space. I say they as though I'm not part of it. But what I mean is, I don't take it as a personal thing. It's not because they don't want to be part of the salsa scene. It's because they also want to enjoy what they want to enjoy. So I think that on the one hand, it's sad because it means that it fractures us to some extent. But on the other hand, it's a good thing because it means that that scene has developed to the point where it can sustain itself, right? In a satisfying form. So I just think that, like, on the one hand, it's a bad thing. On the other hand, it's a good thing.
Angus, I have a question for you because, like, I'm from Tel Aviv, and in Tel Aviv, the scenes are separate. The salsa scene and the bachata scene are not the same. So most salseros don't dance bachata, and most bachateros don't dance salsa. And they're like, yes, it would be one club with 2 rooms, but sometimes it would be completely a separate scene entirely. And I wonder if, like, the way it is now, is this a transition to that? Or, because I remember when I would go there to social dance, people are like, oh, like, how are you switching between the rooms? Well, like, to them, the concept of dancers knowing both is foreign. And I wonder if that's the direction, like, in your opinion, based on what you said, do you feel like that's a direction we're going to now in Toronto?
I think in some sense it already has gone that way, because if you look at the nights, they have, right, clubs that have bachata night and clubs that have salsa night. So I think to some extent it's already happened. And there is I think it's largely true that the majority of people that consistently go to those given nights are kind of like distinct groups, right? Because if I walk into the bachata room at Dover Courthouse or something like that, right? I will not necessarily recognize many people. And it's not because I don't go out, it's just because I tend not to know that crowd, right? And vice versa, I'm sure, for them when they come into the salsa room. At the same time, I think there's still in Toronto, the same way that I think we're relatively inclusive with one another as schools, like we all get along and people take classes many different. I think there's still a certain component that does mediate and go back and forth between the groups. Yeah.
I'm a salsera at heart, but I really love bachata too. So I think I'm one of the few people from our generation that go back and forth. And I do it because I love the music. The music is what drives me. I like the different ways of connection that I apply to all the styles of dance that I go. I'll go to, like, at Dover Courthouse, I'll like do the different floors on different nights because I want to get a taste of that. Although I am a salsera at heart, I do still appreciate that. But I may be one of the rare ones because most of the salseros are salseros. Yeah. Like,
sorry, I just wanted to add to that this is not the first time that there's a huge fragmentations of dance styles, because in the 80s, merengue and salsa separated from what everybody knew as salsa back then. And then I think it was mid 90s where we had a huge Cuban salsa or Cuban timba and salsa. So it happens. And I think it's part of the, go ahead.
Yeah, it also happened like when reggaeton first came on the scene. Everybody was like, "Oh my God, reggaeton is going to kill salsa. No one's going to ever dance salsa again." And like, no, it's not true. Like, there's always other styles.
I think Angus placed it the best. It's a testament to how popular each genre is, because I think that we've gotten to that point where salsa will also start giving off charanga. People will learn, like what I'm seeing a lot in trending in a lot of the dances around the world when I watch videos, people are going back to that musicality part where they're dancing charanga, mambo, the way that it should be or was danced back in the day before it was all segmented into salsa, right? And so people are specializing in very specific types of songs and dances that they like. So I think if anything, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah,
right?
I think, sorry to belabor the point, but I think it's kind of important because the question came about, are the scenes fracturing and do I see with it? But I think that in Toronto, we have people like, for instance, like that Caryl's the kind of person that she likes both. And I think those kind of people are really important to the growth of both scenes. Yeah. Because part of the reason all of the dances develop is because they get infusions from other dances, right? And so you see turn patterns that showed up first in salsa ending up in bachata, and movements that were in bachata ending up in salsa. And that's where we grow, and that's where we find innovation. So I think it's really important that we do our best to try and keep them at least somehow integrated.
So do you guys think that basically the bachata scene has contributed in return to the development or promotion of salsa? Because we know very
promotion of salsa.
well, we know that the bachata, salsa, even the zouk scene were somewhat born out of the salsa scene. They use the platform.
I mean, I think
Like the
because I
Bachata
think
Congress, they see a lot of salsa performances.
Well, the thing now, I think that like especially with bachata events, like even myself who does one, is that I tend to play salsa because for me bachata is a little bit more appealing for beginner dancers, right? So for me, it's like, let's use bachata as a gateway to get these beginners to get them hooked into what salsa is, right? So for me, when I had the events, I loved having salseros who would come out, and I would play a salsa song and seeing them dance phenomenally with sabor and passion. And all these bachateros who didn't know them or see that style of dancing will be like, wow, this is amazing. You know, where did I learn that? Where can I dance like that? Or, and also like salsa it's beautiful, but it also can be very intimidating for people who not necessarily know what they're doing, right? Something as simple like a crossbody lead can look very difficult for somebody who doesn't understand what it is. So to me, bachata was a good way to kind of keep the new generation who, let's face it, it's sexy, it's bachata, right? So let's gap them into this, which is something that to me is our culture, el sabor, it's la salsa that we all love and care about a lot.
Yeah, I agree. Guys, I think we need to wrap it up because some of the panel have to go and this has been way longer than we thought.
That's
I feel like
Spanish for Jennifer has a date.
Very funny. Very funny, Angus. Nice.
She's got to go to that social.
No, I don't go to many of them.
Thank you for putting this together. It's been phenomenal.
Thank you, Jen.
Down memory lane.
Thank you guys so much. I thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for agreeing to do this last minute. You know, you guys are family. You're like my brothers and sisters, and I think it's so amazing to be still friends with people that knew you when we knew each other when we were so young. We've gone through so much together, and we share this amazing passion. It's just really, really, really special to hang out with all of you guys, and I wish we could do this like for hours and hours.
Yes. Thank you, Jen, for inviting us all and putting this group together. And to all of you that are connected, you know, we have many years of friendship and experiences and memories. So hopefully when everything opens up again, we can go and kiss each other and give each other a biggest hug and continue building this friendship that we have for so many years. And as long as we stay safe and do our thing and do our part to protect us and protect the others around there, let's keep promoting the dance, bachata, salsa, cha-cha, any dance, because that's the reason why we are talking today, because of the dance and because of the salsa.
And happy anniversary steps.
Anniversary steps, Jen.
Happy anniversary steps.
Happy anniversary steps.
Hey, cheers.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good night, guys.
Happy birthday,
Cheers,
Steps.
all.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Jen,
Later,
for an awesome
Bye.
night.
Later.
Thank you, everybody.
See you. Love you all.
Keep dancing. Keep dancing.
Steps.
Keep dancing, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen. Love you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Maria. Oh,
Thanks, Jen. Be well.
well, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks,
Guys
Jen.
are
That was
awesome.
beautiful. Wonderful memories. Thank you.
Thank you, Sangris.
It's
Jamie,
lovely.
thanks so much for coming, Dimitri.
Hey, Dimitri. Oh my God. It's been so long.
Thank you,
That's so
Teddy, for
cool.
being here.
Yes. Thank you,
How
everybody.
are you, Dimitri? Oh my God. Thanks, Giovanni.
You guys, bye, hon.
Sorry to
Take care of
interrupt you.
yourself,
You
okay?
talk a lot.
Let's see you soon.
Where's Angelo? Angelo,
Bye.
that's